Hello and welcome year 8 to our first video lesson, which will be literacy, inshallah. I will try to make the video very clear and explain everything. And if you have any question, please don't hesitate in contacting me. Okay, so I know that some of you have the book, but for those that don't have the book, I took the liberty of trying to transform it into a PDF so you can read and follow with me. So, if you've taken a look at the book, you will see that there are different kinds of writing throughout. We have travel writing, we have writing to inform, writing to persuade, etc., etc. We'll be exposed to all of that, inshallah, throughout the year, but we are going to start with travel writing. So, let's move on to see what exactly is meant by that. Okay. Travel writing. Travel writing gives accounts of real places in the world in which we live. It talks about real places where we live. It is usually non-fiction writing. It's true, it's real, and has various forms and purposes. One form of this travel writing is the type of travel writing that you will find in guidebooks or brochures about places that readers may be planning to visit. You know, brochures are these hardened pieces of paper that you find that tell you about somewhere, the prices of things, places to visit, and like that. They're usually folded as well. Okay, so one form is the type of travel writing you will find in guidebooks or brochures about places that readers may be planning to visit. These publications are concerned mainly with giving information. For example, they may recommend attractions to visit such as museums and zoos, or suggest hotels or campsites in the area, or restaurants that readers might enjoy eating in. You may have come across a similar form of travel writing in newspaper or magazine articles in which journalists review a resort or attraction that they have visited and give their views on its suitability for readers and their families. So a journalist would go and visit a hotel or visit a resort, and then they would come and tell us all about it. If it's suitable, if it's not suitable, would they advise it, would they not advise it? However, as we move on, there is another type of travel writing in which authors describe in detail the trip they have made. Here, the writers include details of people they met during their travels, their impressions of the places they visited, and quite often details of the history of those places and their thoughts and feelings during their journey. Do you see how different it is? So it is giving us information, but in a different way. It talks about the people, the impression, how they felt, their thoughts throughout the journey. Now, these books may thus be very close to an autobiography in their tone and content. In many cases, the authors traveled independently by themselves and very often off the usual tourist track. So they don't visit the places that most people visit. They try to visit different places. Okay? Indeed, some travel writers deliberately, which means on purpose, draw a distinction. They make a difference between travelers travelers who are people who travel to places independently using their own means of transport, and tourists who are people who visit places as part of their holidays and for whom travel, accommodation, which is the place where they stay, and sightseeing visits are arranged for them by a travel company. So these sort of travelers usually differentiate between travelers, who are people who travel on their own, using their own means of transport, and tourists. Okay? If we are able or can afford to visit places only as tourists, we may well wish to experience the more exotic parts of the world through reading accounts by travel writers. So if you want to travel as a tourist, you might as well experience through reading what it's like to travel as a traveler. Okay? Now, the article on pages 2 to 4 is by Dervla Murphy, who is an Irish travel writer who has written many books about her experiences while traveling by bicycle or on foot through different countries of the world. As an introduction to the genre of travel writing, read the passage, and then we'll answer the questions in page 4. All right. Extract 1, First Buy Your Pack Animal by Dervla Murphy. In this age of mobile phones, cyber cafes, and satellite links, it's harder than ever to truly escape, but not impossible. Dervla has ventured to the ends of the earth with only the most basic provisions. Dervla, who has ventured to the ends of the earth with only the most basic provisions, explains how. Okay, she has gone on adventures at different parts of the world with the most basic supplies, and she is going to explain how it's not impossible to truly escape. What does she go on to write? The individual traveler's age of adventure has long since been ended by science and technology. Traveling alone individually, going on an adventure, it has been ended by science and technology. Now our planet's few remaining undeveloped expanses are accessible only to well-funded expeditions protected by mobile phones and helicopters. Now, there are few remaining expanses, areas which are accessible, okay, which are gone to by well-funded expeditions where there are mobile phones and helicopters. Okay, so you're never truly alone. Now, an expedition, as we know, is a journey or a trip that you go to in order to see or discover or to learn about something. So now there are only few undeveloped expanses, areas, or places accessible to well-funded expeditions protected by mobile phones and helicopters, enterprises unattractive to the temperamental descendants of earlier explorers such as Mungo Park and Mary Kingsley. This form of traveling where there are helicopters and phones and you have people with you, they're unattractive to the temperamental descendants, the difficult to please. Now, temperamental person is a person whose mood changes a lot, their temper changes a lot. But here it's meant as someone who's, difficult to please in this sense. Unattractive to the temperamental descendants of earlier explorers such as Mungo Park and Mary Kingsley. Descendant. Now, your descendant is your child, your grandchild, your great-grandchild. These are your descendants. And if you're a descendant, then your grandfather and your great-grandfather, and etc., is your ancestor, right? So the descendants of these earlier explorers who really used to travel find these not really adventurous, not an actual and real adventure. Happily, it's still possible for such individuals to go on solo journeys through little-known regions where they can imagine how real explorers used to feel. Now, she said that reviewers tend to describe my most exhilarating, my most exciting journeys as adventures, though to me, they are a form of escapism. Escapism from the word escape. A concept, an idea unfairly tainted with negative connotations. When you think of escapism, why would you want to escape? A connotation is the feeling or the impression that you get when a word is said. So in this case, when a person says escapism, you think, that's not good. Is she running from something? Is she escaping from something? Okay? So if journeys are designed as alternatives, that's the main reason of journeys, right? She said, if journeys are designed as alternatives to one's everyday routine, why shouldn't they be escapist? Why not move in time as well as space and live for a few weeks or months at the slow pace enjoyed by our ancestors? In recent decades, everything has become quicker and easier. Transport, communications, heating, cooking, cleaning, dressing, shopping, entertaining. However, statistics show increasing numbers of us developing ulcers, having nervous breakdowns, eating too much or too little, or retreating from our own reality in plastic surgery clinics. Things are becoming easier, but people still seem to be having problems and developing problems. It's surely time to promote the therapeutic value of travel. Therapeutic from the word therapy, to heal, to become better. It's time for us to exploit, to make use of the therapeutic value of slow travel and enjoy everything at a slow pace. Okay. There is, of course, a certain irony here. Irony, and when you say something is ironic, it's strange or it's amusing in a strange way, something that's ironic. It's like something that shouldn't be the way it is or the opposite of what it should be. Okay, so there is, of course, a certain irony here. Technology has rendered the traditional simple journey somewhat artificial. How is that possible? How can the traditional journey, how people used to travel in the past, alone, by themselves, for example, how can it be artificial? She said previously, those who roamed far and wide had to be isolated for long periods. Now, isolation is a deliberately chosen luxury. In the past, people said people had to be isolated. If you wanted to travel, you had no choice. But now, it's a deliberately chosen luxury. People choose on purpose, deliberately. They say, I want to be alone. If I had died, Of a burst appendix in the Hindu Kush or the Simians or Andes, it would have been my own fault, no two-way radio, rather than a sad misfortune. Therefore, in one sense, escapist traveling has become a game, but only in one sense. The actual journey is for real. Whatever happens, you can't chicken out. You can't back down. You're alone where you've chosen to be and must take the consequences. I prefer to forget that nowadays one is never quite alone. With all those satellites, the solitary traveler may be observed picking her nose in the middle of the Great Karoo. What does she mean by this? She means that people now see everything that you do and know everything. And there are, like she said, phones, helicopters, cameras everywhere. So there's no privacy, basically. You can be observed picking your nose in the Great Karoo. Okay, so to facilitate escapism, I offered the following tips. Number 1, choose your country, use guidebooks to identify the areas most frequented by foreigners, and then go in the opposite direction. It's snobbish to draw a clear distinction between travelers and tourists, yet it's also realistic. You might think snobbish, arrogant, thinking that you're better than someone. So she said it's snobbish to draw a clear distinction between travelers and tourists, yet it's realistic. The escapist traveler needs space, solitude to be alone, silence. Tragically, during my lifetime, roads have drastically depleted that natural habitat. Now roads are everywhere, natural habitats are becoming less and less. Adverts for phony adventure tours make me grind my few remaining teeth. How do you think she's feeling when she says, grind my few remaining teeth? She's frustrated. She's annoyed for the advertisement for phony adventure tours. Phony means fake. So here she means they're unrealistic. She moves on to say, for example, England to Kenya by truck, overland adventure, see 5 countries in 6 weeks. Who in their right mind wants to see 5 countries in 6 weeks? How not to escape? I always try to get off the beaten track. One favorite place where I did so was a trek from Asmara to Addis Ababa. Okay? Her favorite trek was from where? From Asmara to Addis Ababa. She said, things are different now, but most people I encountered then had never seen a white person before. They'd never seen a white person before. Can you imagine that? Everyone was cut off. Number 2, mug up on history. Study history. To travel in ignorance of a region's history leaves you unable to understand the why of anything or anyone. Heavy sociological or political research is unnecessary, although if you happen to fancy, to like that sort of thing, it will add extra dimension to your journey. Learn as much as possible about religious and social taboos and then scrupulously respect them. Okay, what's a taboo? It's a topic or a thing that you can't talk about or you can't do. So learn about the religious and social taboos and then respect them. Scrupulously, greatly respect them. Where gifts of money are inappropriate, find out what substitutes to carry. For example, there are certain countries, if you go and somebody helps you and you give them money, they would think, hey, what do you mean? Do you think I need money? Are you trying to offend me? Do you think I'm poor? So that it's a taboo in that society, in that culture. So she said, where gifts of money are inappropriate, find out what substitutes to carry. In some countries, a code of conduct toward travelers prevents acceptance of money from guests, so I often buy gifts for the children from the local bazaars. Okay. Number 3, don't overplan. At sunrise, it's not necessary, nor even desirable to know where you are going to be at sunset. In sparsely inhabited areas, carry a lightweight tent and a sleeping bag. Places where in sparsely inhabited areas, carry a lightweight tent and a sleeping bag. Places where people are scattered, there aren't a lot of people, the population isn't a lot. There isn't much of a population. Okay, elsewhere, rely on fate to provide shelter. Dependence on those met en route greatly enhances escapism. on the way of your journey. And villagers are unfailingly hospitable, unfailingly kind to those who trust them. I have been welcomed into villagers' homes everywhere I've cycled or walked and was always grateful for what was typically a space on the floor. Trust is a key word for relaxed traveling among people whose different way of life may demand adaptability but should prompt no unease or suspicion. So, what should happen? What should happen is that you should trust the villagers. When you trust the villagers and they know and feel that you trust them, they are very, very hospitable to you. Number 4, be self-propelling. Walk or cycle. Move. To propel is to move. Move on your own. It's important to travel light. At least 75% of the equipment sold nowadays in camping shops, such as travel clothing lines, rolled up camping mats, lightweight hair dryer, is superfluous. It's extra. It's unnecessary. My primary basics, although it depends on the journey, are a lightweight tent, a sleeping bag suitable for the country's temperature, and a stove. For long treks, far from roads and towns, buy a pack animal to carry food, camping gear, kerosene for your stove if firewood is scarce, if it's rare. And remember, campsites suitable for you may be disaster areas for a hungry horse or mule. Then you must press on, often to a site hardly fit for humans, but providing adequate grazing, suitable place for your horse or your mule, your pack animal to eat, to move around. So you should, press on yourself. You should press a little bit on yourself. The site might not be very suitable for a human, but it should be suitable for your animal. Why? There is nothing more guilt-provoking, makes you feel guilty than seeing a pack animal who has worked hard for you all day, denied sustenance, denied food, denied nutrition, denied something to eat. Number 5, cyberspace intercourse spoils genuine escapism, spoils true escapism. Abandon your mobile phone, laptop, iPod, and all such links to family, friends, and work colleagues. Concentrate on where you are, deriving your entertainment from immediate stimuli. Things that stimulate you immediately, right now, from the tangible world around you, the actual world, the touchable world around you. Increasingly in hostels and guest houses, one sees independent travelers eagerly settling down in front of computers instead of conversing, having a conversation with their fellow travelers. They seem only partially abroad, unable to cut their links with home. Number 6, don't be inhibited by the language barrier. Don't be stopped. Don't be prevented. Although it thwarts exchanges of ideas, although it prevents, the same meaning basically as inhibited, it's unimportant on a practical level. I wandered around 4 continents using only English and a few courtesy phrases from Tibetan, Amharic, and Quechua, Albanian, or whatever. Okay, Tibetan area close to the Himalayas. You've got Amharic, Ethiopia, Quechua, Peru, Albanian, or whatever. Our basic needs, sleeping, eating, drinking, can always be indicated by signs or globally understood noises. People's features, particularly their eyes, are wonderfully eloquent. They're wonderfully expressive, extremely expressive. In our daily lives, the extent to which we wordlessly communicate is taken for granted. In faraway places where nobody within 100 miles speaks a word of any European language, one fully appreciates the range of moods and subtle feelings that may be conveyed, that may be shown visually rather than orally, okay? By your eyes rather than what you hear by speaking. Be cautious. Cautious as distinct from timid. Be cautious. Don't be timid. Don't be cowardly. Don't be weak, okay? Be cautious. Cautious is distinct from timid, all right? The assumption that only brave or reckless people undertake solo journeys out the beaten track is without foundation. It's not true. It has no base. In fact, escapists are ultra cautious. Super cautious. That's one of their hallmarks. That's one of their signs, and an essential component for their survival mechanisms. Before departure, they check out. Before they leave, they check out likely dangers and either change their route should these seem excessive, or prepare to deal with any reasonable hazards. Your outlook on life is also a factor to consider. Why should your bones break abroad rather than at home? Optimists don't believe in disasters until they happen and therefore are not fearful, which is the opposite of being brave. So, an optimist would say nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen until something actually happens. So, is that good or bad? What do you think? Okay, that's why she said your outlook on life is also a factor, the way you think about life. If somebody's an optimist, then they're going to say, hey, nothing's going to happen. But what if something does happen? And last but not least, invest in the best available maps. And whatever you do, don't forget your compass. All right, now I hope everything was pretty clear. I tried to explain as much as I could. The video is a bit long, but I hope that you've all understood everything. Now this is exercise 1. You have from questions 1 to 4. Read the questions carefully, and answer in full. All right, and what I want you to do is, some of you also took their copybooks from school, but for those of you who have not, taken copybooks from school, please, if it is possible, buy a copybook and answer. I want you to answer in the copybook using your handwriting. I don't want it to be, virtual, I guess. So for those, because some of you are going to come back to school, so they don't have to copy things again or anything like that. Okay, so get a copybook, read the questions carefully, answer in full, write neatly, number your questions and answer them. If you have any question for me, something you don't understand, like I said in the beginning of the video, don't hesitate to contact me. All right, that should be it. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson, inshallah.